So, you want to build a 4-link and you have no clue what mounts to use. Today, we're going to be talking about all the different 4-link mounts that are out there, what their different intended purposes are, and some of the different things that you could also potentially use them for. If you're new to the channel and into off-roading, rock crawling, and all things Jeep, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button and hit the bell for notifications. Today we got a whole ton of different Barnes 4-wheel drive mounts and tabs and products here in front of us. We're building a 4-link suspension underneath our CJ7 project. This thing's going to be linked in the front and rear, and to be honest, we didn't know what mounts to use, so we got a hold of Barnes 4-wheel drive and ordered almost all of them. We're definitely financially responsible and sticking to a budget. To be honest, we're dealing with some clearance problems and I had no clue which mounts would work. So I kind of wanted to show you guys these different mounts because each one has its own intended purpose and also can be used a little bit differently. So I want to show you how that can play out. So if you're looking at building a 4-link, most of the time a single triangulated setup is going to be your easiest system. We're doing triangulated uppers. When you get into doing triangulated lowers, your cross member makes it a good bit more difficult, and clearances make it more difficult as well. Right now we're working on setting up the front end 4-link system on this. So we're doing, like I said, an upper triangulated system. We're going to start talking about the frame side mounts first. When you're doing the uppers, a lot of times guys will use a mount like this, which it's really awesome because it does have 3 different mounting point holes, which is going to allow you to set your anti-squat or anti-dive. As you move the upper link up and down throughout these different mounting holes, it's going to give you different anti-squat and anti-dive values as it changes the frame side link separation. So this mount is ideally what most people would use. However, it's also the biggest mount. So if you're dealing with a space constraint, this might be one of the more difficult ones to fit in there. On the passenger side here, we got my drive shaft, and we're dealing with, at bump stop, some clearances on my drive shaft. Unfortunately, this won't work for my application, but if it does fit, I recommend you use it. Next down, what's going to give you a little bit more room, and it's going to be really user-friendly, Barnes has this awesome mount. And what it does is it just sits right up inside the frame rail, and it incorporates your upper and your lower mounts all in one bracket. This eliminates a lot of the guesswork. You got to have room for it and put it up in there, tack it on, make sure everything clears. And for the most part, with a mount like this, you're going to be good to go. One thing interesting about this mount, instead of the upper control arm mount, the bolt being horizontal for the heim joint, they took and flipped it vertical. So with this one, your heim is going to be, the bolt's going to run in a vertical orientation, but that's perfectly fine. With these heims, you get so much articulation out of them that it's not going to be a problem. This one's going to be a little bit more space saving than the previously mentioned one. But once again, if you're dealing with a really tight area, it might not work, but I'm willing to bet it would. One thing that's pretty cool about this one that I like and want to point out to you, the lower link mount here actually comes with a pre-bent piece that's going to act as a skid and stiffen all of this up so that when it hangs down, you don't have too much to worry about. So these are your 2 typical upper link mounts. Looking at things, we came up with 2 more solutions for how to mount that upper link mount in a confined space area. So this here is going to be what normally would be used as your lower link arm mount. It's going to sit right underneath the frame rail, and that's how pretty much everyone mounts their lower link arm. We did start looking at it, and if a guy had to, same thing. There's no reason why you couldn't flip it 90 degrees, run your link bolt vertical and put it right up inside your frame rail just like that. When you measure your clearance this way, you're going to have more clearance with this one than you would with this one, and pretty close to what you would with this one. So in a confined space area, this is going to help you out a little bit. The only issue with running one like this, or the last one I talked about, you're not going to be able to change your anti-dive and anti-squat without actually relocating the mount. So there is a little bit of a limitation. Lastly, the mount that's going to give you the most amount of room, it's going to be a little untypical. This is actually the mount that is intended to be used on top of your truss. So this is your upper 4-link mount that goes on top of the truss. But same thing, what we're doing for my application, because we're very limited on space, we're going to flip this mount to the side and we're going to burn this inside the frame rail. This one gives us the most amount of room. When this mount sticks off the frame rail, it doesn't stick off as far as any of the others, and it's going to leave room for my drive shaft when we go up to full bump. So this is actually the mount we're going to go ahead and use. I do want to we're going to hold the different mounts up on the frame rail so you can kind of see how they all mock up in there and the different spaces that things take up as well. If you have the space, definitely recommend you run the traditional mount that's going to come with any of their 4-link mounting setups. But if you don't have the room, there are other options. I scrolled through their website and looked at all the different mounts and thought, how could I use this even in a way that might not be how they intend, just so that I can get it squared away up in there. I did actually talk to some of the tech support guys over at Barnes and ran by with them what my idea was, and they said that they can't even see any reasons why one of these two mounts shouldn't work well for that upper mount. So we'll go ahead and show you guys that stuff. Moving down to the lower arms, like I said before, this is your mount that's going to go on the bottom of the frame rail. It's a pretty standard mount, and it's what most people use. One thing kind of cool, when you order this mount, what comes included with it is another little skid piece that you're going to weld on here. It's going to help stiffen all this up and act as a skid. When you get over to your axle end, they have this mount here, which is just going to fit right on your axle tube, and this is going to locate your lower mount. And you can get this at different degrees of rotation. So if you were running a dual triangulated one, you can get this so that it's set up for 20 degrees to get your link arm pointed in the right direction for you. The one thing we are going to end up doing to this one, we're going to take a little bit of this ear off because I have a truss on my axle, so it's going to help locate that. One thing I really like about Barnes, they have measurement specs of almost all of these mounts on their websites in with the pictures. So what I recommend you doing, get everything really close to where you want it, go get some PVC, start mocking it up, and measure things out with a tape measure. It's going to give you a really good feel of what you can fit and where. This mount does come with the kit. I knew it wasn't going to work for my application, but it's already included in the kit, and I honestly wanted to show it to you guys. So, as I mentioned, this one sticks the furthest off the frame rail, and if you can fit it, it's what you should really use. It's going to sit just like this. And the reason why I can't use it, this PVC drive shaft here is clearly going to run right into my link mount as we go up in our suspension travel. So obviously that's not an option for us, but this is what most would use if possible. Next up, we got our 2-in-1 mount. I really wanted this one to clear because it simplifies things a ton. However, same thing, it sticks just a little bit too far off the frame rail. I could potentially clear the drive shaft, but there's a very high probability of that drive shaft hitting that mount when I go to bump stop. If you've got room for it, man, this thing is going to make your installation go easy, and I would love to use it. However, it's not going to work for our application. So this was one, I had looked at the measurements of it online, and I ordered extras of this one. As I mentioned before, this goes on the bottom of your frame rail, and it's going to locate your lower link mount. I bought extras anticipating to flip it horizontal and put it on the frame right here and use this one as my upper mount. And I could, and it would probably clear the drive shaft. It's going to be close, but it would likely work. However, once I got the kits in and got to looking at things, I saw another mount that would work a little bit better that I didn't even think of when I was cruising around on their website. As I mentioned before, this mount normally goes on your truss just like this to mount your upper link mounts on the truss end. But I realized this mount is significantly more compact than any of the other mounts I had. So I'm going to order more of these because I'm going to rob the mounts from my rear kit so I can finish up the front. I'll order these so that they come in and I can finish up the rear. I'm going to put these right here on the frame rail, and they're going to give me the most amount of possible drive shaft clearance. I think this is going to work great. I'd really prefer to use this than just 2 homemade tabs. I'm not comfortable with that. I think this is going to be a lot stronger. Now, if you're building your own suspension, you're going to have more stuff to mount up than just your 4 links, more than likely. You're going to probably have to mount up your shocks. You're hopefully going to be running some form of bump stops and different things like that. Same thing, I didn't know exactly which ones would work for me, so I ordered a whole slew of different shock mounting options. This one here is honestly what I plan to run on my axle. As I mentioned, I do have a truss. It has flat sides all the way around, so it'll sit down perfectly flat on the truss and burn in really nice. We're going to run shock mounts made out of tube up off the frame rail. So what this mount will allow us to do is we're going to have the tube and it's recessed on the one side, so it'll sit up really nice on the tube. So this is another great option for mounting the top end of your shock mounts. This one's a little bit different, and I'm going to use it not quite how they illustrate it, but same thing. If you look at it and kind of think outside the box, you can figure out a ton of uses for these things. This one is intended to be used on an axle that doesn't have a truss on it. It's arched on this side, so it would sit down on top of the axle that has no truss. We have a tube cage in the rear end, and we're going to use that bevel on part of the tube cage in the rear end to locate and mount the top end of our rear coilovers. If you're using the Barnes product lineup and you need to mount some bump stops, they make this awesome bump stop pad that is designed to work with their trusses. Their truss slopes away at an angle, and this pad is designed to work with that angle. So you set that on there and you got a perfect bump stop pad. Really looking forward to using this. Anyhow guys, if you're struggling to figure out which mounts to use for your setup, go on Barnes' site, take a look at the different measurements of everything, get you some PVC and a tape measure, and just start measuring, see what fits where, and go from there. They definitely make a product that will work for you. You just need to figure out which one that's going to be. Really hope this helped simplify or clarify the subject of 4-link suspensions and mounts for you a little bit. If you want to see this suspension completely come together, see us build it all out, make sure you hit the like and subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. We're going to be building out the CJ7 rock crawler, and every detail of the build is going to be laid out in a video on the channel for you guys. Anyhow, thanks a lot. I really hope this helped. As always, stay active and keep exploring.